Attention, attention, breaking news. We're going a little early today. I know it's like 15 minutes early, but hey, when news breaks, we're going to go early. That's what it is. You know, and I was ready to go. And this is the thing. When Donald Trump says, hey, look, well, I want to have an emergency press conference, then we're going to honor his wishes. We're going to make sure that everybody gets the information that they need. So we're going to go live right now to the Oval Office. Donald Trump said, I'm talking at 11. And then, of course, 11 came and went, and he wasn't talking. And then he said, all right, all of a sudden, boom, he just went live. And we're gonna listen in because apparently this is some kind of an important Oval Office announcement. There's more executive orders popping in. Let's listen in and see what he's saying.
Unusual number of people are surprised by it. I'm even a little surprised. On auto jobs, we created almost 9,000 new jobs in the auto production field. And the reason for that is largely they think things are happening, so they're already geared up. In some cases, they had rooms in their plants, or they had empty plants that they were able to put into use quickly because they see because of the tariffs, they don't want to be dealing with other places, and they don't want to go back and forth and around and through the borders and across Mexico border and Canada border.
All right, so it appears this is about tariffs,
in one location,
which have been the big conversation the last couple of weeks.
And if they had space, they were able to create the jobs almost immediately. In some cases, they'll be building plants to take care of those jobs.
That's
good. So we created 9,000 new jobs already in the auto production, auto parts manufacturing. So we want the auto parts ideally, and I think from a simplicity standpoint too, to be built and made in the United States.
That makes sense.
It's in a single month. That all took place in a single month. 9,000 new auto jobs. You haven't heard that in a long time.
No.
After auto workers lost more than 27,000 auto jobs in the final year of Biden. These are also high-paying jobs. These are very prime jobs.
Yeah, prime jobs.
The ISM Manufacturing Survey and the S&P Manufacturing Survey have also confirmed that our administration is presiding over a brand new domestic manufacturing boom after major collapse under Biden. It was a collapse. All he did is keep adding new government jobs, which are not the jobs you want. We're trying to shrink government and
you definitely don't want
sector.
You don't want a government job right now, that's for sure.
Under the final 2 years of Biden, 1 in every 4 jobs created in America was a government job. That's a tremendous percentage.
Horrible.
But under the first full month of President Trump, which we haven't even gotten started yet, an incredible 93% of all job gains were in the private sector. So that statistic just came out.
Great job.
Big gains for native-born Americans. For the first time in 15 months, the job gains for native-born Americans, for American people born in America, exceeded job gains for migrant and foreign-born workers. This is the first time that's happened in more than 15 months.
It's true. I'm a migrant and I don't have a job.
Native-born workers went up by 284,000, while foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. Now, you've heard the same stat where foreign workers were taking up all the jobs or almost all the jobs. In some cases, literally all of the jobs. And now it's 284,000 native-born jobs here, people born in our country, 284,000, while foreign-born workers went down by 87,000. First time that's happened in a long time. So these are incredible numbers, and they're very
All right, so
early.
it's a jobs report as well.
5 weeks.
What we're getting here is a jobs report / tariff information.
The big win in November 5th. So a lot of these people, they listen to us speak and they say, well, I'm going to gear up, and they're gearing up. And so they've been gearing up. They've had a little time. It's not just
gear up.
It's not just 5 weeks. It's 5 weeks plus a few months.
Gear up, folks.
And
it's happening.
They put it into effect pretty quickly. They have confidence that what I'm saying is going to happen.
Yeah.
So with that, I'd like to ask a highly respected gentleman, Kevin Hassett. He's been with us for a long time.
Oh, my God, I love Kevin Hassett.
He's been right about a lot. We had the greatest economy in history in the first term.
I love Kevin Hassett.
And Kevin was a big part of it. So, Kevin, could you maybe give it a little description, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Trump. I think that the three things that you emphasized during the campaign is that you wanted to create domestic, high-paying manufacturing jobs, that you wanted to end wasteful government spending, and reduce the unproductive government workers, and in fact unleash them into the private economy where they could be more productive, and to create jobs for Americans. A lot of people said that if you deported illegals, that employment would go down.
It's Peabody and Sherman.
No Americans would take those jobs.
No,
If you
no
look,
Americans would take those
280,000 American-born folks were hired. Manufacturing jobs are going up. And this is just out of the expectation of your future policies, really, sir. It's in April when your Reciprocal Trade Act is expected to happen. The tax cuts haven't passed yet. And so people are clearly expecting the golden age. And if you want to forecast the future numbers, everybody, just keep in mind that President Trump has already gotten us $1.7 trillion in commitments of new factories. And those haven't even happened yet. Those aren't even in the numbers. And so I expect this is going to be a glimpse of a golden age to come, sir.
Look at that.
Thank you very
It's
much.
Kevin Hassett, the director of the National
One other
Economic
thing,
Council.
In Canada,
Genius,
we
by the way.
find that they're charging us over 200% for dairy products. You know about that.
Of course.
And when I left, we had that well taken care of. But under Biden, they just kept raising it. Very difficult to deal with the Canadian representative.
Yeah, Canadians stink.
250% for dairy
Canadians
products.
are so difficult.
Tariff.
I'm
So when you
related
hear
to
that,
so
you don't
many
hear
Canadians.
that.
They're so difficult to
They
deal with.
have a tremendously high tariff.
Yeah.
Give you the exact numbers in a little while coming out on lumber. So they sell us lumber. They have a tremendous tariff. They make it impossible for us to sell lumber or dairy products into Canada, but our numbers are a tiny fraction of that, almost non-existent. And what we're doing is freeing up our forests from the environmental nonsense that they put on them, where you can't cut down a tree. And we have to cut down trees in order to build the firewalls. And those trees are sold. But we're freeing it up on an emergency basis because Canada has been ripping us off for years
Canadians.
on tariffs for lumber and for dairy products. 250%, nobody ever talks about that. 250% tariff, which is taking advantage of our farmers. So that's not going to happen anymore. They'll be met with the exact same tariff.
Good.
Unless they drop it. And that's what reciprocal means. And we may do it as early as today, or we'll wait till Monday or Tuesday. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to charge the same thing. It's not fair. Never has been fair. And they've treated our farmers badly. Look, our country's been ripped off by everybody, and that stops now. I had it stopped in my first term, and we're going to really stop it now.
Let's really stop it.
This has been very unfair.
I love it.
Our country, from an economic standpoint, a financial standpoint, and a trade standpoint, has been absolutely ripped off by almost every country in the world.
This is called doubling down, by the way, on Canada.
Mexico, and then you just go right down the line. India charges us massive tariffs. Massive. You can't even sell anything into India.
No.
It's almost restrictive. It is restrictive. We do very little business inside. They've agreed, by the way, they want to cut their tariffs way down now because somebody's finally exposing them for what they've done. And same thing with China, same thing with a lot of other countries.
Christiane Haggerty, thank you so much.
The EU has been a terrible abuser of this country. I mean, the EU was formulated in order to take advantage of the United States. And they have taken it, but they're not taking advantage when I'm in charge. So
call it the FU.
Sometimes you'll hear some negative things. It's always from outside countries.
I'm on a roll
America
today,
will be very strong. And, if I'm a foreign country, they're going to do fine. But they can't do like they used to do because we're going to bring back our business into this country.
Yes.
We need it from a job standpoint. We need it from even just a psychological standpoint. Think of it, 90,000 factories are gone since the beginning of NAFTA. So we're not going to have that.
Transplanted native, thank you very much.
Now we've already had 5 major automobile companies. First time you've heard this in a long time, since my first term actually, where we were really rocking and rolling, and then Biden came in and he stopped everything.
I think Biden's the worst.
Stupid thing to do.
So stupid.
Not even a believable thing. But we have many auto plants now coming in. We have big chip plants. We have the biggest chip company in the world, most powerful, probably one of the most powerful companies in the world.
Oh wait, different kind of chips.
Wouldn't you say, Kevin? And he's coming in, and they're building one of the largest chip plants in the world. That'll be done in Arizona, mostly in Arizona. And that'll give us a big percentage. That one plant will give us a big percentage of the chip market.
Silence your cell phones when you're live in the Oval Office. Come on.
We used to have Intel.
Silence those cell phones.
It was run by a man named Andy Grove. And Andy Grove was a tough smart guy. I used to read about him when I was a young man, and he did an incredible job. He really dominated the chip business.
Yeah.
And then he died, and I guess they had a series of people that didn't know what the hell they were doing, and we gradually
Typical
lost the chip
of this
business,
country.
and now it's almost exclusively in Taiwan. They stole it from us. They took it from us, and I don't blame them. I give them credit. I blame the people that were sitting in this seat because they allowed it to happen. We
Always
could have
blame
protected
the
that so
presidents,
easily, but
except
so
in
we
this
had
case.
the chip business, and now it's all in Taiwan, almost exclusive. A little bit in South Korea, but mostly in Taiwan. And it's very important. Everything you do, everything you touch is now about chips. The brake of a car, cars have chips all over the place. I was reading an article the other day where they talk about the brakes of a car are loaded up with chips. Who would think that a brake has a chip in it? But
My
it's
shoulder
all
has a
about
chip in
chips.
it.
So
Or on it.
that
I
was
think
a
it's
big
on
thing,
it.
and they'll
Right?
be investing
Do I have a
hundreds of
chip in
billions
my
of
shoulder? No,
dollars
on my shoulder.
in this country,
chip
and
right
we'll be
here.
taking back a big portion of that industry.
Oh, I have a
We
chip
others
in my
coming
tooth.
in too.
That's another one,
But
too.
a lot of car manufacturers
everywhere.
are coming in, and they're coming in fast. And one of the reasons you see these numbers, and again, Kevin said it,
Yeah.
and I said it a little bit, but the fact that they know I won the election. So
That's true.
after I was president-elect, they assumed that I was going to do what I said, because I do what I say.
Mm-hmm.
And so these numbers really reflect a lot of things that took place since November 5th, right? So Kevin, thank you very much. Great job. Any
I love
questions?
Kevin Hassett. Oh, here we go. Here comes the question, the Q&A part.
The large-scale federal government layoffs will weaken the labor market. How concerned are you?
The large-scale fentanyl what?
The federal government layoffs will impact the labor market.
Oh, I thought she
Will
said
weaken the
fentanyl,
labor
too. She said the federal government layoffs
No, I think the
will
labor
impact the
market's
labor
going to be
market.
fantastic, but it's going to have high-paying manufacturing jobs as opposed to government jobs. We
Yeah.
had too many people in government. You can't just do that. We had many too many. This is for 40 years. You know, this isn't just now. This built up and got worse and worse, and
Yeah.
they just hire more and more people. You look at Department of Education, it seems like so many buildings I ride by, it says Department of Education. They're all over the place. And we don't even want it. We want the education to be given by the states. It'll be much better.
That's
It'll be,
right.
it'll move us to the top of the list from the bottom of the
There
list.
are so many federal
And
buildings
actually
in the
save
United
us
States.
money. But
It's
no,
wild.
It's too important to even talk about them. It'll save us a lot of money.
Yeah.
But we don't want that. We want education to be given. So you go to Iowa and Indiana and Idaho and all these places that are so well run. They're going to be producing education that will be the equivalent of, like Denmark is
Yeah.
one, and Norway, Sweden. Actually, China is one of the better in terms of education.
Yeah.
And so we can't blame size anymore. You know, China has 1.4 billion people, but they're very high on their list. The one thing we're doing well on, we're number one on the list, is cost per pupil. We spend more money
I love
than
this.
any other country in the world by far.
No matter how often I
So
hear
I
it, it just,
jokingly
I love
say
it every
the one
single
thing
time
we
I
do
hear
well
it.
on is the cost. We spend more money, and yet we're toward the bottom of the list. Yeah.
Mr. President, I want to ask you, the joint address, millions of Americans watched your joint address earlier this week where you warned that there could be a little disturbance that Americans could feel as a function of these taxes, these tariffs. How much disturbance are you willing to accept in the near term as a function of that? And to set expectations, how long should Americans expect things to cost a bit more?
Well, so far, Peter, there hasn't been very much because these numbers are coming out. We're here for just a little over 4 weeks. And these are fantastic numbers. I was watching some of the reports this morning. They were surprised. There could be some disturbance, a little bit of disturbance. I solved a little bit of that because I have respect for our auto companies, and I gave them a little bit of a 1-month reprieve because it was unfair, although I'm sure they'll take advantage of it. I see they're driving a lot of cars into the U.S. to try and avoid the tariffs, and they're taking advantage of it a little bit. But they called me, they asked me, they said, could they have a little bit of help? And I decided, they're American companies, USMCA, and I let them have that. But this really kicks in, the reciprocals, kicks in on, let's see, I guess the 2nd.
Yeah. Of
And
April.
I wanted it to be the 1st so badly. Just didn't want to be on April Fool's Day. So I made it the 2nd. That's going to cost a lot of money. That one day is going to cost a lot of money, but that's okay.
And one day it's going to cost a lot of money,
But
but that's
I don't
okay.
see it. I don't see anything. I see good reports. I think we're going to have good numbers from the beginning. Now,
My favorite thing about Donald Trump-
globalists won't love this because this
Oh, hold
brings
on.
jobs
We're
back
talking
to
about
America.
globalists,
So if they're coming back to America, maybe you'll lose some in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
But The other parts of the world have done very well, and they'll continue to do very well. But
I love
think
about
the
Donald Trump
United
because he
States
says
is gonna
something
be
like
doing
he's
record
complaining, like it's
business.
going to
We'll bring
cost us a
those
lot of money. I
90,000
really want
factories
on the
that have
first.
been lost
He complains,
over
then he
the
goes,
last
but that's
number of
okay.
years. It's been
like-
it's hard to believe. 90,000. Think of what 90,000 is. 90,000.
I'm going to lose billions of dollars. Billions of dollars are going to be lost, but that's okay.
Plants and factories.
One day the tariffs are on, the next day they're off. Right now, the markets, as you know well, prefer stability. Are you done going forward with the pauses and the carve-outs? Is that it for those?
There'll always be changes and adjustments, and you can't just. I could have, for instance, told the American car companies, "No, I'm not going to give you anything," and then you wouldn't have had to say, "Well, they're getting a little extra." It's just a little bit of a 1-month reprieve. They're very happy about what's happening. They won't have to go across borders, and you see the zigzag, and you have a fender made in Canada, you have something else made in Mexico. We don't want that. We want it made here. But there'll always be some modifications. I mean, if you have a wall in front of you, sometimes you have to go around the wall instead of through it. But I think very little. On occasion, if we can do something, we want to help companies. We want to help companies create jobs. So I could have left that, and you wouldn't have had a minor change. Instead, I was asked by the real majors, the big majors, if they could do this, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. I want you to produce a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
And numerous of the people, actually,
He's talking,
all
by the
of
way, if
people
you're
I
just
spoke
joining
to
us.
have
By the way,
already
we
been-
jumped in early
they're
today
very
because
much on the
President
way
Donald Trump had an
forward. And that's why
emergency
you have
press conference,
auto jobs
and he's talking about the
increase.
jobs report, auto
And
jobs, the tariffs. Now he's taking
man, I
questions
don't
from
know,
the press,
Sean Fain, I don't
and
know,
he's basically saying, "Look, I gave a
and they did
reprieve to
great,
the
and,
auto
with
industry
the auto
because that's a lot of
workers,
jobs and
the
manufacturing
unions,
that
they
we
did
need." And they asked
fantastically
me,
well, best numbers
That's all it
ever
takes.
by
Just
a
ask nicely.
Republican. And I have a lot of respect for those people. But Sean Fain, who I don't know, but wasn't a supporter, although the auto workers were big supporters. I watched him last night, and he said Donald Trump is absolutely right on tariffs. He said what he's doing on tariffs is an incredible thing, and it's about time somebody had the guts to do it.
Yeah.
Because we're going to save auto manufacturing. And I
See?
said to people when I was campaigning, you're going to have so many auto jobs, you're not going to believe what's going to happen.
Even
We're
Sean
going to
Fain's
load up
coming
Michigan. I won the state of Michigan, as you know. And part of the reason I won it was I got a lot of auto workers that voted for me, Detroit, etc. But I think people are going to be very surprised. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned in your remarks chips manufacturing, how a
What'd you say?
significant percentage is now in Taiwan. You also mentioned it
Chips. Oh,
in
there's-
your address to Congress. And you called on Congress to overturn the CHIPS Act, which had bipartisan support in the last Congress. Why would you like to see this particular law overturned?
talking about the
Because it's
overturning the
hundreds
CHIPS
of
Act.
billions of dollars, and it's just a waste of money. Now, some people have already taken the money and used it. Actually, it's very hard to qualify because they go by race, they go by gender, they go by all sorts of things. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. You won't be able to find those people. So I don't even think anybody can qualify. They have so many different categories in order to qualify. You have to have so many of a certain race, a certain gender, a certain this, a certain, and it's, I don't think they can qualify, but if they take the money,
Yeah.
they better qualify because they'll be watching them. But it's a tremendous waste of money. I didn't give the greatest chip company in the world, one of the greatest companies, I didn't give them 10 cents. They came here because of tariffs, because they didn't want to pay the tariffs. And they also came here because they like the results of the election, because they know that I'm very pro-business.
When he's done,
and
I'll explain the
pro-job.
CHIPS
I mean, I'm
Act to
pro-business,
anybody who's confused
not
about
for
what the
business
CHIPS
sake.
Act
I'm
is
pro-business
and why it's
because
different
of
than what
jobs,
Donald Trump's
because
doing.
Business is producing
I'm making
the
a note.
jobs. Okay?
The CHIPS Act was horrible because
President Putin is bombing Ukraine.
Yeah.
Do you still believe him when he tells you that he wants peace?
Yeah, no, I believe him. I believe him. I think we're doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and Ukraine. I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards. They don't have the cards. As you know, we're meeting in Saudi Arabia on sometime next week, early. And we're talking, would I find that in terms of getting a final settlement, it may be easier dealing with Russia, which is surprising because they have all the cards. I mean, they're bombing the hell out of them right now. And I put a statement in, a very strong statement. Can't do that. You can't do that.
Mr. President?
We're
Thank
trying
you,
to
Gail.
help them. And Ukraine has to get on the ball and get a job done. Michael, could you come up here? I see Michael back there.
That Michael
Good,
Waltz,
I'm glad.
or Mike
He's
Waltz,
traveling
as we
all
call
over the
him.
world. I just saw him come in the door. Could you
Oh, it's Michael Waltz. Now it's Michael.
definition of what's going on, please?
Our good
Well,
buddy.
the
Here we go.
president has been crystal clear, and he's been clear to all sides. The fighting has to stop. Both sides need to get to the table. We had a good engagement. Both leaders have said only President Trump could do so, and only he has been able to do so. We had an initial engagement with the Russians. The Ukrainians had a great opportunity to bind our economies together through that mineral deal. Unfortunately,
They blew it.
That didn't go so well, but we think we're going to get things back on track. Secretary Rubio, myself, and Ukrainian delegation will be meeting in Saudi Arabia next week to get these talks back on track, get a ceasefire in place, and drive peace home.
Back to
Under
Saudi
President
Arabia,
Trump's
man. That's a crazy trip.
You put out on
I think
social-
both parties want to settle. I think if I wasn't president, this war would have had no chance of settling.
never happen.
Zero chance. But I think we're going to get it settled and stopped. We got to stop. They're losing on average 2,000 soldiers a week. That's a lot of soldiers. Do you agree, Peter?
It's a lot of soldiers on both sides, I agree. Do you, Mr. President, think that Vladimir Putin is taking advantage of the U.S. pause right now on intelligence and military aid to Ukraine?
No, I actually think he's doing what anybody else would do. I think I think he wants to get it stopped and settled, and I think he's hitting them harder than he's been hitting them. And I think probably anybody in that position would be doing that right now. He wants to get it ended, and I think Ukraine wants to get it ended, but I don't see, it's crazy. They're taking tremendous punishment. I don't quite get it, but I suspect, Michael, he probably wants to get it ended.
He does, Mr. President. The Russians are taking incredible losses on the front. As the president has
They both
said,
are.
this is a meat grinder of people, of material,
Can you move the
of
boom,
national
please?
treasure, and no one else has any solutions except to let this war continue forever. But I'll add, the president has had multiple conversations and a visit from President Macron of France, Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom. We have the NATO Secretary General coming next week. We have this meeting with the Ukrainians. We've had it with the Russians. All of this in the president's first month in his leadership.
Yeah.
We will engage in the shuttle diplomacy, and we will continue to use his leadership and what leverage we have to get both sides of the peace table. It's not going to be easy, but President Trump.
This war should have never happened. It would have never happened if I were president, but it did happen. So
It's Mike Waltz,
a lot of
former
other
congressman,
things
Florida
shouldn't
6th
have happened,
District,
too.
and current
We shouldn't
National
have
Security Advisor.
21 million
Or
people pouring into
Michael
our country
Waltz,
through
as
open
he's now
borders,
known.
many of whom are criminals, very bad criminals, including murderers, thousands of murderers. Many killed, far more than one person, and they're roaming our streets. But Tom Holman and Kristi Noem are doing an incredible job, and we're getting them out of here. And we'll get them out. We'll get them all out. But all these things shouldn't have happened. We shouldn't have inflation. We shouldn't have had this horrible inflation.
Nope.
Where the prices have gone up. Look at eggs. So we're doing a good job. We're doing a good
Mr.
job.
President, in regards to the pause on military assistance to Ukraine, you put out on your social media post today that Russia is pounding Ukraine.
That's right.
Why not provide Ukraine with air defenses? And what happens, Mr. President, when Ukraine runs out of
Well,
the
because
Patriot missile
yeah,
batteries?
good question.
They hopefully
because I have to
surrender.
know that they want to settle.
Right, you got to
I
settle.
don't know that they want to settle. If they don't want to settle,
I don't
we're
understand
out
these
of there.
reporters.
Because we want them to settle. And I'm doing it to stop death. More important than anything else. Secondarily, way down the line is the money. So we're in for $350 billion, and Europe is in for $100 billion. They should be in for the same or more than us.
Yeah.
And, you
Stupid
know, I
Europe.
watched over the last week or so what's
Sorry
going
about
on in
death. I
Europe.
apologize.
This thing could end up in World War III if we
Yeah.
don't get it settled. This could really end up in a World War III. We got to get it settled.
So on Iran,
I mean, it really makes
how
sense to-
confident are you
I don't know why it
that
doesn't make sense to anybody
Ukrainians
else.
will negotiate with you, and is Israel on board with this outreach?
Yeah, I saw the hostages the other day. They came in.
Talking about the Israeli
People
hostages
that
and the
were not
situation with
young,
Hamas.
Some young and some older, much older. And they gave, it was hard for them to do it, actually. They gave statements as to what happened. I was asking, what happened? How was it? I said, did you see anybody in there that was kind, like out of the hundreds of people that you were seeing, Hamas? Did some of them wink at you and say, don't worry, you're going to be okay, or give you a piece of bread, or no? I said, were there any people that were, like, kind? I was shocked. The answer was nobody. There was nobody. Just the opposite. They'd be slapped and punched. One man broke his ribs. He couldn't breathe for a month. It was brutal. I was so surprised. Could you think there'd be a couple of people that would be kind, that would say, you're going to be okay, but they had none of that. It's pretty amazing. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. President.
He's a kind person.
Well, according to the
Although
internet,
not to Zelensky, he wasn't. But to Trump, he's been good. Go ahead, Brian.
Nice tie, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I like yours too.
Nice tie. I like. Yeah,
One on peace.
kissing, but yellow
Why
brown
don't
something
we
on your
think
nose there,
the other
Brian.
European countries are
Although it is a very
offering
nice tie.
Peace deal. It seems like no one's come to the table for peace except for you.
Yeah. It's a very good question. Sometimes questions aren't answerable. They're in a very unusual position. They don't know how to end the war. I think I do know how to end the war. Despite the Russia hoax, I've always had a good relationship with Putin. And, you know, he wants to end the war. He wants to end it. And I think he's going to be more generous than he has to be. And that's pretty good. That means a lot of good things. Because frankly, you could have made a great deal if this war never started, you could have made a great deal. I don't know that anything would have had to be given up. This was not a war that was going to start, Brian. And it didn't start. For 4 years, somebody said, well, how do we know that? Well, for 4 years, it didn't start. I used to speak to Vladimir about it. I used to speak to him about it at length. It was the apple of his eye, but there was no way he was going in. And he knew, there were going to be consequences. But it did start. I mean, think of what happened. Inflation, you have the war with Ukraine and Russia, that wouldn't have happened. October 7th would have never happened. Israel, they had no money. Iran had no money. Iran was stone cold broke, and now they have a lot of money. But then that's going to be the next thing you'll be talking about is Iran. What's going to happen with Iran? And there'll be some interesting days ahead. That's all I can tell you. You know, we're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time.
Final strokes. That's a golf metaphor, by the way,
We'll see what happens.
which
But
I was waiting for.
we're down to the final moments.
Yeah.
We're at final moments. You can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I think that I would have had a deal within 1 month after the rigged election of 2020. They were all set to make a deal. And then when I lost, they saw this person who's a stupid person, very stupid person. And they said,
He's
let's
talking
not make
about
a deal. And they were right.
Joe Biden, by the
He
way,
took the
in case you
sanctions
were
off.
wondering.
They became rich under Biden.
Yeah.
They went from having no money to having $300 billion.
Yeah.
All in a short period. It's oil. Oil builds up fast. It's a nice living if you have a nice oil well. And they do. They have a lot of nice oil wells, right? So anyway, it's going to be a big thing. It's an interesting time in the history of the world. But we have a situation with Iran that something's going to happen very soon. Very soon. You'll be talking about that pretty soon, I guess. And hopefully we can have a peace deal. You know, I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other. But the other will solve the problem.
Mr. President, your allies are calling on you to pardon Derek Chauvin. Are you considering pardoning Derek Chauvin?
Derek
No, I haven't
Chauvin.
even heard about it. No.
Mr. President, on peace.
I haven't heard that.
In the first term, you may recall, I broke the news that you were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And the reason for that was the work that you led on the Abraham Accords.
Don't worry,
I
folks. I'm
spoke
taking notes, by the way, so we can come back to all this stuff.
Parliament
I got notes.
that nominated you. And he said what the Nobel Committee is looking for from you, Mr. President, is security guarantees for Ukraine. Is that a possibility, Mr. President?
So before I even think about that, I want to settle the war, get it finished.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not here, nobody's going to settle it. And President Macron has said that, and everybody said that, the prime ministers and presidents. We're pushing very hard. That's all I'm thinking about now. As far as the question about security later, that's the easy part. The hard part is getting it settled. We got to get them we're losing 2,000 human beings every week.
Yeah.
More than that, actually. 2,000 nice, young, although they're getting older because they're drafting much older now. In the case of one country, much older, because a lot of the young people have been killed. It's very sad, and I'd like to see if I could stop that. And I'd like to also see if we could stop making these massive payments from the United States. I mean, Biden gave away money like it was water, with no anything, got nothing for it. Europe did it in the form of a loan. They get their money back, we don't. So that's how we came up with the rare earth deal.
Yeah. Save lives
But
and
we
money.
started, behind the
perfect
eight ball.
sense.
He could have gone to Europe. He could have said, "Come on, you got to put up money with us. You got to put up money with us." But he never did that. They just kept handing money out
Like
because he
water.
was grossly incompetent. All right, thank you very much, everybody.
Oh, that's it?
Thank you, Press.
All right. Thank you,
Thank you
press.
very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. There you go. Thank you for joining. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. What an exciting impromptu press conference from President Donald Trump. These things, like I said, they can pop up at any time. You never know when Donald Trump is going to, he's going to get the, the inkling for a good press conference. And so what happened was, let me just welcome everybody here to the show today. This is Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. Thank you so much for joining us. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel, especially if you're new here. You can be watching on Facebook or YouTube. I don't know where you're watching, but wherever you're watching, we really appreciate you being here. And like I said, I took some notes. During that press conference, so we're going to go back and we're going to hit some of the highlights of what President Trump was talking about, and we're going to dissect it a little bit more. But if you haven't yet subscribed, if you're listening on the podcast page, make sure you tell iTunes, "Oh, I want more of this." Make sure you tell Spotify, "Oh yes, this is amazing stuff. Let me keep having it." And of course, if you're on YouTube or Rumble or any of those other fantastic platforms, we also want you to keep coming back every single day. Now, we did get a couple super chats. Christiane Haggerty and Transplanted Native. I appreciate that while we were watching. Let me go back through here real quick and just kind of recap what President Donald Trump was saying. And we'll go, let's go backwards, because the last thing he talked about was the war in Ukraine and peace and Russia. So that's fresh in our minds. And really, the thing with the war in Ukraine, the thing with Russia, the thing with Zelensky is it's just mind-numbingly stupid. It's just mind-numbingly stupid at this point. It's to the point where Vladimir Zelensky knows exactly what he can get. He can get out of this war. He can end it right away. He can get a deal with the United States of America, which he claims that he wants, and he can give us rare earths and rare earth minerals and aluminum and titanium and all this other stuff that they have they've got so much of it, man. It's like they could make us wealthier. They could make themselves wealthier. And Donald Trump has pledged, as part of the agreement, to send in American manufacturers, American precious earth metal extractors. I mean, we're not just going to let them do it. We're not going to say, "Hey, send us what you got." We're going to go in there and we're going to build infrastructure so that we can extract this stuff and send it back home to the United States of America as part of the deal. So now we're economically tied, as you heard our good buddy Mike, or Michael, look at that. He was Mike Waltz for years when he was a congressman. Now he's in the Oval Office as the national security advisor, and all of a sudden he's Michael. So Michael Waltz is in there and he's talking about how this was a done deal. He could have had a partnership with us, an economic partnership, which is the best kind of partnership to have. If you make us money, we will protect you. If we have a deal in place where we're getting precious rare earth metals and minerals, then we will protect that country. And if we are there on the ground as an economic powerhouse, then guess what? Nobody's going to attack. I mean, Dubai is one of the safest places in the world, and it's right smack dab in the middle of the Middle East. And the reason that Dubai is so safe is because pretty much every country in the world, every first world country at least, every economic powerhouse in the world, China, the United States, Great Britain, Saudi Arabia, everybody has invested so much money in Dubai that there's not going to be any attacks. There's not going to be any war. The investment there is so intense that we're just looking to protect it. Also, if anybody tries to commit a crime, they cut off your hand, which is the other. Well, I'm all for that here, by the way. I'm all for that here. So Donald Trump was asked about Ukraine. He said, look, I don't know what this guy wants anymore. He doesn't want to settle. He's not coming to the table. We told him 1,000 times, here's the deal. He came to the White House. He basically spit in my face. He spit in J.D. Vance's face. We had to throw him out. And then he went around the world, trying to get more money from Europe, realized that that's like, that stone is dry. You can't get blood from that stone anymore. You can squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, but the EU lemon ain't juicing. I don't even know if that's a saying, but I may have just turned that up. I may have just made that up. Squeeze the lemon you squeeze that lemon, but it ain't juicing. It ain't juicing like an NFL football player or a pro wrestler. So Donald Trump says, like, I don't know what else to do. And they said, well, Russia is pounding Ukraine. And Donald Trump says, yeah, I mean, they want it over too. Everybody at this point in time now is trying to get Vladimir Zelensky to just come to the table and agree on a ceasefire, agree on a peace deal. Everybody is trying to get Vladimir Zelensky to come to the table. You heard Michael Waltz. We're going to Saudi Arabia. Secretary Rubio. Although I like Secretario. That's good. Secretario Marco Rubio. He's going to Saudi Arabia. They're going to sit down with the Russians and they're going to try to come to some kind of peace deal. And the only thing holding this up right now, is the president of Ukraine. And you have to sit and you have to ask yourself, wait a minute. If you are not coming to the table, if there's 3 parties involved and 2 of those parties are like, yeah, let's sit down and talk. And the third party's like, no. Who's the problem? The problem apparently is Volodymyr Zelensky. And in my humble opinion, it's because I don't think he wants to go back to being Volodymyr Zelensky, former comedian and president of Ukraine. I think he would like to continue to be Volodymyr Zelensky, war hero and wannabe Ukrainian G.I. Joe legend who gets flown around the world for free, who gets to go to Congress and get big checks for billions of dollars, who gets to attend the Grammys and the Oscars, and who gets to go on Vogue magazine with his wife and drive Ferraris around Spain and become a household name. I think he prefers that life. It's weird, but, I've never been in war. I know that there are people who go to war and it becomes their identity. It becomes like they had nothing going on beforehand. So going to war becomes their identity. And if the war ends, so does their identity. It's like his life would end. I really firmly believe that Volodymyr Zelensky feels if this war ends, so does his entire life. And he's going to have to go back to being just Vladimir. He wouldn't even be president anymore because the first thing they do is have an election. And I imagine that any part of this agreement requires Vladimir Zelensky to restrict the martial law, call an election, and not run. And that's the thing, because he could be like, I'll call an election and I will run and win. Any deal, and I haven't seen the deal. I haven't talked to Michael Waltz. I haven't talked to Secretario Rubio. But what I imagine is the deal goes like this. The United States of America comes into Ukraine and we start farming and scavenging and excavating the rare earth minerals, and we'll break it up in this percentage. We will, in turn, make investments into Kyiv and every other city that's been devastated, and we will rebuild your infrastructure. We already were rebuilding their power grid when it got decimated by Russia, and Donald Trump said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to rebuild your power grid because you're not really appreciative of anything that we do. And we're trying to end this war. And we're not going to just keep coming back and rebuilding the power grid, right? It's not a game of Jenga. It's not like we're going to rebuild Jenga just so he can pull the pieces out, have the tower fall bit down, and then we're going to come back, rebuild it again, and then he's going to pull the piece out and it's going to fall. That's not what we're doing here. If we rebuild Ukraine, it will be only after a deal has been made, so we know our investments will not be in vain. We will rebuild Ukraine as long as it's not in vain. And I knew that was going to rhyme when I said it, so but that's the problem with Volodymyr Zelensky. The guy's got to go somehow. And any deal is going to be, we're going to excavate the rare minerals, we'll keep you safe, we'll invest in your country, but you cannot be president anymore. It's time for fresh blood. And I know what the argument is. Well, Russia's going to put in a stooge. Russia will bring in puppet president. They'll install puppet president in Ukraine who loves Putin and will handhold country. No, it's not going to happen because Donald Trump and the United States of America is going to be fully invested. It's really wild. It's really weird, but I think it's getting clearer and clearer, not just to the people here in the United States of America, because support is starting to, I think support's starting to wane. I know I know there's a lot of people out there that still have Ukrainian flags on their Facebook pages. I know there's people out there who still have the Ukraine flag in their bios. I have, however, seen a lot of people with the blue and the yellow, and it says, I support Blockbuster Video, which just cracked. I mean, I think I spewed my coffee earlier today. I think I spewed. I was sitting here, I was drinking my coffee, I'm rolling through X, and I see the yellow and the blue and the yellow, and I go, what now? And it says, I support Blockbuster Video. And I was like, and there's still, I got to wipe. In fact, I just did it again. Now I got to wipe my screen. It's a good thing you can't see my computer screen because it's filthy. It's filthy at the moment, but that's what's going on. That's what's going on with Ukraine. And Donald Trump, he's asked about the Nobel Peace Prize, and you want to talk about a politician, you want to talk about somebody who knows exactly what to say, and probably, look, this is what he believes, but it's also what you have to say. He goes, I'm not even thinking about a Nobel Peace Prize. He said, I'm not thinking, you know what I'm thinking about? The 2,000 people every week that get killed. The 2,000 men who are sent to the front line, many of them against their will, many of them with families. The young people are decimated. They're all gone. Now they're going to the 30 and 40-year-olds. And when the 30 and 40-year-olds are dead, guess what? They're going to be next thing they're going to be doing is they're going to be going after the elderly. They're going to have a geriatric army before too long. They're going to have guys with bad hips and wheelchairs out there trying to fight the Russians. And Russia has way more people. Russia has way more people than any other country in Europe. They have 5 times the people than Ukraine. They could each kill the equal amount of people every week, and eventually Russia wins. Everybody can see that. Everybody knows it. It's a simple fact. Putin, and I'm not saying Putin's a great guy. Putin's a horrible guy. Putin's an evil dictator. Putin's probably killed people. I don't have any proof, but I mean, look, it's weird for one Russian oligarch to just accidentally fall out of a window, but when like a dozen Russian oligarchs accidentally fall out of a window, or wait a minute, what was it? One of them fell off of his yacht and drowned. Okay, that's the mind. But I mean, look, I imagine there's a lot of corruption and a lot of evil doing by Vladimir Putin. I'm not saying he's a good guy. And yes, he took full advantage of Donald Trump not being in office when Joe Biden was around to invade. But again, was that his fault? If he's a snake, he's a scorpion, he's a lion, he's a tiger. If you know someone is going to be violent, if you know somebody could kill you, if you know somebody is deadly, if you know somebody has bad intentions, do you let them out of the cage? No. You keep him. If you've got a mass murderer in a cage, you want to keep him in the cage. Joe Biden opened up the door and said, have at it. And now Donald Trump's trying to figure out a way to get him back in the cage. That's where we are today. So Vladimir Putin's not a great guy, but Vladimir Putin, he'll kill as many of his own people and his own soldiers. He'll watch them die. He's not like Donald Trump. He's not like J.D. Vance. He's not like Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Donald Trump, when he calls a military action, he wants precision. He wants a precision drone strike. He wants lethality. He wants somebody who knows how to go in, do the job, extract the threat or destroy the threat without killing any Americans or risking any of our own lives. And we've seen that. We saw that when he took out General Soleimani. General Soleimani, the top terrorist general and instigator, and the guy who was responsible for just thousands and thousands of deaths and could have killed thousands more. I mean, if General Soleimani were still around, I imagine October 7th in Israel would have been way worse. That guy was taken out by a single solitary drone strike in Iraq. No civilian casualties, no American casualties. It was brilliant. And Donald Trump, that's how he likes to fight and win wars. Vladimir Putin will send every last person he has to the front to die because he knows he has more of them. It's like that video game, where there's like just more and more troops coming at the one guy and you've got to shoot. It's inevitable. And that's why Donald Trump's trying to stop it as fast as possible. And the only one standing in his way is Vladimir Zelensky. Somebody else asked about Derek Chauvin. And they said, Derek Chauvin, you may remember, was the police officer who was arresting George Floyd, put his hand or his leg or whatever it was. And then it was, I can't breathe and all that. And he got arrested and sentenced. Somebody asked if he was going to pardon Derek Chauvin. And Donald Trump said, no, I haven't heard anything about that. See, the interesting thing is there's stories that the mass media and the news will pass around, and they just assume that it's the news. They just assume everybody knows about it. But Donald Trump's like, I haven't heard anything about that. Don't bother me with that. I'm not gonna talk about that. And then finally, the CHIPS Act. So Donald Trump started off this whole thing. He started off this whole thing talking about the jobs report and talking about the American investment in the economy and tariffs and how, man, we've been so mistreated by Canada and Mexico. They've been mistreating us, not just with fentanyl coming across the border, but also with these tariffs. And did you know that they tariff us this much and we don't tariff them at all? And did you know that there's a 200% tariff on this? Then he talked about India, which, yeah, that's why you don't buy anything from India. There's really very few things in this country you can buy from India. And the reason is because of the tariffs. And we don't sell anything in India because guess what? India doesn't want us to. India does not let us sell anything without paying massive amounts of tariffs. And that's why India has grown exponentially. Pardon me while I sip some of my coffee. India has grown exponentially. Their population is huge. They're the most populated country in they overcame or they overpowered China, which nobody thought would ever happen. But lo and behold, India now has more billions and billions of people than China does. Their economy is bustling and growing. They are a power. They've so many American jobs have been exported there. And if you don't believe me, just call tech support and you'll find out exactly what I'm talking about. And Donald Trump's trying to get all those back. He's trying to make sure that India isn't such a terrible country when it comes to reciprocal tariffs. And the reciprocal tariffs are they're gonna hurt everybody, and hopefully they'll have a positive impact. And Donald Trump said, "Look, I gave the reprieve to the automakers because they called and said, look, we supported you. We also not only support you, but we need these tariffs to remain low." Because it's gonna when you have an expensive product like an automobile. When you have an expensive, all of a sudden I'm Forrest Gump. Automobile. I was running. What even was I saying? Oh yeah, when you have an expensive product like an automobile, the tariffs hit harder because 25% of an automobile is a lot more than 25% of a pen. Although there's not a lot of Canadian pens. A bottle of maple syrup. Although maple syrup, why is maple syrup so gosh darn expensive? I'm not talking about the Aunt Jemima kind or whatever they call it now. What do they call it? Aunt Jemima is not Aunt Jemima anymore. It's something else. It's not log cabin. Oh, I forget what it's hold on. It's something I don't even really, I can't even remember. It's not even a memorable name. Pearl milling. Yeah, that's what it is. It's pearl milling syrup or something. Is what it is. So now Aunt Jemima is now pearl milling syrup, I think is what it's called. And it's just, I don't know, it's just weird. But anyway, that's the inexpensive stuff. I'm talking about the real maple syrup, the stuff that comes direct from the tree onto your plate. It's like $14 a gallon. I'm sorry, more than that. Like not a gallon, a liter or whatever it is. I don't even know a half pint. I don't know what it is. But it's like, I mean, it's crazy. You want to talk about liquid gold. It's so much more expensive than, say, gas. It's wild. I hate it. But, I mean, it's so delicious. In fact, when we were in New Hampshire, and I'm not just talking about Canadian maple, I'm talking about all maple syrup. We were in New Hampshire, and we were at this diner. And it was like a cute little New England town, and we're hanging out in the diner, and I ordered, the big breakfast or whatever they called it, or the New England breakfast, English. I don't know what it was. And it came with, because I was hungry, and it was breakfast and I was on vacation. So it came with like eggs and bacon and toast and a side of pancakes. And I know that listen, before you come at me, I know that pancakes have zero nutritional value. I've been told that before. I know pancakes are it's just basically carbs and sugar, which is then more carbs. There's no nutritional value, but I like them. And so whenever I can, I don't eat them every day. I eat them maybe a handful of times a year. But when I do eat them I really enjoy them, and I want the good maple syrup. So we're sitting there in New Hampshire, and I ordered the big breakfast, and I said I want the side of pancakes, and the lady goes, "Do you want maple syrup or do you want New Hampshire maple syrup?" And I said, "Well, of course I want New Hampshire maple syrup." And she goes, "Okay, just so you know, it's $2 extra." And I was like, "Oh, $2 extra?" And I go, "How much more do I get?" She goes, "You get the exact same amount." Lady brought me I'm talking maybe 2 to 3 ounce, maybe 3 ounces total of maple syrup. And it was $2 extra, meaning it was already factored into the price of the big breakfast. And then they threw for 3 ounces of maple syrup. I don't know what it is. It's sap from a tree. And the last time I checked, there's a lot of trees in New Hampshire. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the tariff on a bottle of syrup is a lot lower than the tariff on an automobile. So the car manufacturers and the car producers and the car production companies in America went to the White House and said, can you please give us a break? He goes, yeah, I'll give you a month. And that way we can hopefully settle it all up. And then the other thing, of course, was this CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act. So here's what happened. Okay, here's the long and the short of it. We used to make microchips in this country. Microchips, the semiconductors, the things, the things that we talked about where you put it on your finger and it has all your data and it's in the cell phones. And Donald Trump was talking about it's in your brakes because anti-lock braking systems now all have sensors in them. You need all of these cars that drive themselves, not just the Teslas, but it's pretty much every automaker nowadays has cars that drive themselves. And I took my son to the auto show. I don't know why I can talk today. Maybe it's Friday. I took my son to the auto show here in Jacksonville a couple weeks ago because, we're dudes. We like to look at cars. Although I have to tell you, there's something fascinating about the maturity level of my son throughout the years, because we've been going to the auto show every year since he was like 4. Right? Maybe even younger, maybe 3. Ever since he could walk, I was like, you have to come to the auto show. And it's a tradition. My father used to take me to the auto show when I was growing up, and I took my son to the auto show. And there's something about dudes and auto shows. It's just great. But we go to the auto show, and it used to be 5-6 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you go to the auto show, there was one electric vehicle, and it was a Tesla. Or it was, I think BMW had one of the first ones that was really mainstream, and they put it right in the center, and it would swivel around like this and there would be the model going, "Ooh, the new electric vehicle, the EV future is here," and there'd be like, like sound effects and stuff and a spotlight, and you'd walk up and you'd be like, "Whoa, what is that? Electric BMW? Whoa, ooh, Tesla! Wow, that's cool!" And the doors would open, like wing. It was like a big thing to see the one electric vehicle at the auto show. Now you go to the auto show and there's none of that because everybody got an electric vehicle, at least one. Some have multiple. And there's the Chevy booth. Chevy's got electric vehicles. Ford's got electric vehicles. Dodge, Volvo, Volkswagen, every single car dealer. It's like you just expect to go see. There's a brand new electric Escalade, which I have to tell you, I'm not into electric cars, but the electric Escalade is amazing looking. Truly, I got into it. I thought I was in a spaceship, and it's super comfortable. The entire dashboard is a screen. The screen starts here, and it's like one of those super amazing screens that you see people have on their desks where you can open all your apps at one time. It's truly, truly incredible. But the fact of the matter is that I don't even know where I was going with this. Oh yeah, the chips are in basically everything. So the computer chip industry got decimated when Joe Biden and Barack Obama started shipping all the jobs overseas. And they started making deals with places they started shutting down our factories or making it too expensive. And so they moved. They moved all the way over to Asia. They moved specifically to Taiwan. And now the largest manufacturer of computer chips is in Taiwan. And it used to be in the United States of America. And so now Joe Biden realized it was an issue. Joe Biden realized because the computer chip industry, and you may never have thought about it, but it is not just an economic issue. It's not just a technology issue. It's not just a world domination issue. It is a national security issue. Because when we talk about the grid going down, or when we talk about, everything coming to a halt or having to go into the woods because, the grid went down, that's computers, that's computer chips. And it doesn't even need some kind of attack on our system, on our grid to take down all of our electronic devices. If China takes over Taiwan and Taiwan makes all of the chips, guess what? They could just stop sending them to us. And we're way behind on chip manufacturing. We would basically crumble. Our iPhones would stop working. Our cars would stop driving. Our watches, our computers, our entire. You want to talk about Y2K? If you remember all the stuff about Y2K, whoever controls the computer chip industry, and these tiny little, what do you call it? Whoever controls that controls the world. And right now it's controlled by Taiwan, which may or may not be controlled by China before too long. It's one of the reasons why China wants Taiwan back so much, because it's a national security issue. And Donald Trump, he wooed, what is it? It's Taiwan Semiconductor TSMC, I think it's called, the largest company to come back to Arizona and to bring with it $100 billion worth of investment and start producing 40% of our computer chips back here in the United States of America. And he did it with tariffs. Joe Biden tried to do it with the CHIPS Act. And the CHIPS Act was another government billion-dollar payout to rich people in California. The CHIPS Act was stupid. The Democrats, see, they don't know how to negotiate at all. They just bribe people and pay people. It's like it's their way. When you're a Democrat, the only way that you think you can get somebody to do something is by paying them or bribing them. Take, for example, back when Barack Obama was handing out cell phones. Do you remember he needed votes? So what did he do? He went into urban neighborhoods and he gave out cell phones, and we saw the video, the viral video of the woman going, "I got an Obama phone. Woo, look at my Obama phone. Obama's handing out free cell phones. I think I'll vote for him." And he got all the votes and he got elected. And then what happened? All the people in the urban city centers with the Obama phones were like, "That's great. Thanks for the phone. I need a job. I need money. I need health care. I need crime to go down. I need a safe place to live. Where are all the other things I got my phone, but it got stolen because I live in the center city and there's no police here." Obama, thanks for nothing. They just bribe people to get them to act the way they want. And they did the same thing with the CHIPS Act. The CHIPS Act was a payout to technology companies to try to get them to build more, to do more manufacturing here in the United States. And it was incentives, but as Donald Trump pointed out, the incentives were for a specific, portion of employees or factories or building in specific places. And it was all just another DEI woke power grab that funneled money into the hands of the richest Democrats imaginable, the people in Silicon Valley, the Intels and the Oracles and the places like that. So Donald Trump said, look, we don't work that way. Here's how we work in the Republican Party. Here's how we negotiate in the new golden age. We're not going to pay you to make your chips in the United States of America. We're going to charge you if you don't. Whoa, wait a minute, what? And now, all of a sudden, you get movement from people. If you tell your kids, hey, you know what? Stop yelling and I'll give you $1, they may stop yelling for a little while. But if you tell your kids, stop yelling or you owe me money, or I'm going to start charging you, or I'm going to take it out of your allowance, then they all of a sudden start paying attention. It's why we have swear jars and not swear payments. You know, there's no swear incentives. Where was I? Oh, yesterday I went to the St. Johns County Republican Executive Committee meeting. Why? Well, because, well, we'll get into that here in just a minute. But I went to the St. Johns County Republican Executive Committee meeting because they're part of District 5, which is my congressional district. And they are represented by Representative John Rutherford, who's one of the worst representatives in the entire world. And somebody should primary that guy in 2026. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But anyway, so I'm at the meeting. And we're sitting around and we're talking about it, and they have a brand new headquarters, and they were just moving stuff in, and they're like, we're excited about the new office, and we need volunteers, and blah, blah, blah. And one of the guys goes, oh, and I already threw $10 in the swear jar. So I'm covered for a couple of weeks, because apparently they like to swear a lot the Republicans in St. Johns County, Florida. Apparently they cuss a lot. So they throw money in the swear jar, but that's the concept. If you swear, you pay. If you don't swear, great. You get to keep your money. It's not, if you don't swear, we're going to pay you. We're going to pay you not to swear. It's the other way around. And so Donald Trump says, we're not going to pay you to make chips in the United States of America. We're going to charge you out the yin yang. We're going to make it so uncomfortable for you financially. We are going to push you to the brink of bankruptcy if you don't make your chips in the United States of America. And wow, you know what happens? The chip maker in Taiwan goes, okay, find me some property in Arizona. Here's $100 billion. Let's make some chips in the United States of America. And that way I don't have to worry about the tariffs. It's really a simple process. And it's really, really dumb the way the Democrats have been handling it. By the way, that's Donald Trump's second press conference in the Oval Office in like 24 hours. He just did one yesterday after. It was less than 24 hours. that Donald Trump was in the White House doing a press conference from the Oval Office answering questions. He was doing it all yesterday, too. All yesterday, he came in and people were asking him questions, and they asked him about Ukraine, and they asked him about Russia, and they asked him about whether or not he was worried about nuclear weapons. And he said, you know what, I 100% am, actually.
I'll say that we've made a lot of progress with Ukraine and a lot of progress with Russia over the last couple of days. And it'd be great to bring that to an end so we don't have to talk that way about nuclear. It'd be great if everybody would get rid of their nuclear weapons. You know, we have Russia and us have by far the most. China will have an equal amount within 4 or 5 years. And it would be great if we could all denuclearize, because the power of nuclear weapons is crazy. And, you know, I was very far along the process with Russia, despite the Russia hoax, which didn't make it easy. It was a total hoax, a total rigged hoax by some bad people. But despite that, I was very close to having a program with Russia, denuclearization, and we were going to get China. I spoke to President Xi about it, and he would have been very happy to have gone along with it. But bad things happened, like an election that was rigged happened, and so we had to come back 4 years later. But I would very much like to start those talks. The opposite of what you say, the denuclearization would be incredible.
Look at that. And see, this is a guy, it's so amazing to me. The things that Donald Trump says and the things that the media reports him saying or doing or wanting are just so dramatically different. I mean, it's polar opposite. Donald Trump's going to start World War III, yet here he is saying we want peace in Ukraine and we want to denuclearize the entire world. Nuclear weapons are bad. If somebody wanted to start World War III, they wouldn't be running around going nuclear weapons are bad. If somebody wanted to start World War III, they wouldn't be saying, hey, you know what we need to do? Stop funding Ukraine. They'd be doing the opposite. They'd be saying, what's the easiest way to start World War III? Well, probably exacerbate the situation in Ukraine, keep sending them money, maybe even put boots on the ground. Or if Donald Trump really wanted to start World War III, the easiest thing he could do is just say, yeah, Ukraine should be part of NATO. And as soon as the Ukraine's application was, you know, what do you call it? Like notarized? I don't know. Do you notarize? I imagine you notarize a NATO application. I mean, I had to notarize like my kids, you know, science fair application. So I imagine if you're becoming a member of NATO, then you would have to get some kind of notary public involved. But that would be the easiest way. And the fact that Donald Trump says, what's the easiest way to start World War III? Okay, great. We are never going to do that. And then the media turns around and says he's going to start World War III. Man's absolutely doing everything in his power to not start World War III. Another piece of news, which was really exciting. I talked about this earlier today in the 47 Daily podcast, which, by the way, a lot of people I've realized I'm getting a lot more comments on YouTube and on the podcast page. People are saying things like, I start my morning with you. Or I love starting my morning with the 47 Daily podcast. I get my coffee, I sit down, and I listen to the 47 Daily. Thank you so much. And I love that because I'm a morning person, you know, and I love to get an early start. Some days what happens is, for whatever reason, you know, there's difficulty news gathering. Today, someone was actually clamoring for it. She wrote on my X page, she's like, where's my 47 Daily podcast? It's 8:30 already. I was like, I know, we had a little issue. You're trying to wake up my daughter. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But we try to get it out as soon as possible. But I'm so glad you love the morning news, and it's a great, I guess you would say, partner to what we do here, because the 47 Daily podcast every single morning is all the news directly from the White House. It's from the White House to my ears from the White House to my mouth to your ears for the next 4 years. And it's not a lot of, it's shorter in length by any means. It's basically just news from the Donald Trump administration. And then later on at noon o'clock, we have the Kaye Saves the Republic podcast, which is live, as you know right now, if you're watching, or if you listen on the podcast page later on at your leisure. It's, whenever it is you choose to listen. But all of these things work in tandem together to keep you informed and keep you entertained and keep you enlightened and inspired. So I'm glad that you're enjoying it. One thing that Donald Trump also mentioned yesterday was this assassination report. So we know who the shooters were, or we know who was on scene as the shooters. We know about Ryan Ruth in Florida. We know about that. We know that he was found in the shrubbery while Donald Trump was playing golf and he was rounding the fifth green, whatever. And then there was the Then there was, the Secret Service agent who saw him and was like, oh no. And they started firing at each other, and then they caught him, and he had all these cell phones, and everyone was like, wait a minute, who is this guy? And is there a deeper conspiracy? And then, of course, we know about Matthew Crooks. Well, we know very little about Matthew Crooks because Matthew Crooks was gunned down by the Secret Service after he took a shot at Donald Trump's head in Butler, Pennsylvania, killed Corey Compertor, and then his body was, miraculously cremated like almost instantly. So there's a lot of questions that remain. Well, there's a report coming out, and Donald Trump was asked about that report and whether or not he plans to release that report. And here's what Donald Trump said about that report.
Oh, well, and the second one with all of his cell phones. So I want to find the answers. I've told them. In fact, today I said, I want to find, we can no longer blame Biden for that one. He should have released that a long time ago. So they are giving me a report next week sometime, and I do believe I'll be releasing. I want to release the report. A lot of people have asked that question. You had one who had 3 apps, 2 of which were foreign, supposedly, and who has the biggest white shoe law firm in Pennsylvania, even though they don't live in necessarily a white shoe area. What's that all about? His law, the law firm. The other one had 7 or 6 cell phones. And I don't have 6 cell phones. And why would somebody have 6 cell phones? So we're going to be releasing a report on that soon, Peter.
But based on what you're saying right there, the lack of information and the data points that you just gave, does that make you think that there's some part of there's some bigger...
It could be. Well, it makes other people think that. It makes me think it a little bit too. I say, when you have 3 apps and 2 of them are foreign, and you had an FBI that wouldn't report on it, they didn't want to say why, I would say that could be suspicious. And then on the second assassin, you had, and by the way, I have to tell you, Secret Service did a great job on that by spotting him. But on the second one, he had 6 cell phones. That's a lot of cell phones. And a couple of them had some strange markings on them. So, yeah, I want to find out, and I would be willing to release it. I mean, maybe there's a reason that we shouldn't, so I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis, but yeah, I would be very willing to release that. I'd like to see it. I want to see it myself, Peter. Not only you, I want to see that one myself.
So hopefully we'll get that report before the Epstein files, which we're still at the Epstein files. Remember last Friday when we were all excited about the Epstein files? Remember, it was last Thursday, actually, when the binders came out. And then Friday, we were supposed to get it. It was like Pam Bondi demanding by 8 a.m. I want everything in my office. Everything from New York should be in my office by 8 a.m. And now it's like a week later again. I still don't know anything about Epstein that I didn't know before. But hopefully, again, that's neither here nor there. Hopefully, we'll get these files before too long. But it is really kind of an interesting. It is really kind of an interesting situation that we have with this assassination report and Donald Trump saying, yeah, this guy had so many cell phones. I'm the president of the United States. I don't have 6 cell phones. Some of them had strange markings on them. Oh, does that mean that they were in a foreign language? Like, I don't know, Ukrainian or Iranian or some other language? I mean, think about all the enemies that Donald Trump has. Think about all the enemies. It's not just Iran anymore. Ukraine really at this point now is not. They're not interested in Donald Trump making peace. So really, they could be antagonistic toward Donald Trump. There's a lot of different enemies out there that Donald Trump has made just trying to, do the right thing, which is how you make enemies. We have enemies too, but we have a lot of friends. One of them is Colonial Metals Group with our good buddy Paul Stone. Colonial Metals Group is the premier gold and silver IRA investment firm that we've found. Make your savings bulletproof, secure your financial future with gold now. And one of the coolest things about Colonial Metals is they're not just trying to sell you something. They want to inform you, just like we do here on Mark Kaye Saves the Republic every single day. And that's why they put together a free gold guide. So if a lot of people talk about gold. Every time I go online or I listen to a podcast, the host is talking about gold, this, gold, that. And a lot of folks go, I don't even really understand how it benefits me. I don't understand. How does gold protect and grow my retirement savings? How does gold offer a strong defense against de-dollarization? How does gold optimize my assets and savings? How is gold tax-free and penalty-free? Well, Paul Stone and Colonial Metals Group put together a free gold guide, and you can get it, guess where? freegoldguide.com/K, Kaye. freegoldguide.com/KAYE. That's my last name. The link is in the description of this video that you're watching online. If you're listening to the podcast, just go to freegoldguide.com/KAYE, and you can find out about qualifying for up to $7,500 in free bonus silver sent to your home or stored in a secured vault of your choosing. That's a limited time offer on qualifying accounts. freegoldguide.com/KAYE is where you go to get that. So, I mean, look, it's great that Donald Trump is continuing to talk to the media. It's great that Donald Trump is continuing to work with Canada and Mexico and the auto dealers and trying to figure out the best way forward so that, yes, we have tariffs, and yes, we get treated fairly by our quote unquote allies. And it's also great that Donald Trump is trying to work out a deal with Ukraine and Russia. And he's right. And he said, look, I mentioned on Truth Social, which he did, which always sparks the discussion these days. He said, based on the fact that Russia is absolutely pounding Ukraine on the battlefield right now, I am strongly considering large scale banking sanctions and trading tariffs on Russia until a ceasefire and final settlement agreement on peace is reached. To Russia and Ukraine, get to the table right now before it is too late. Thank you. So again, he's doing everything he possibly can. But at the end of the day, you've got two countries far away that have been battling for centuries. I mean, Ukraine and Russia have been battling for centuries. This is not a new conflict. This is an age-old conflict. It's just like the conflicts in the Middle East. And Donald Trump is doing his best to stop it. Not for awards, not for Nobel Peace Prizes, not for $1 million grand prize. He doesn't need the money. He's doing it because he doesn't want people to die anymore. And apparently he's the only one. A couple other things I want to share with you. Breaking from Eric Daughtry, Kamala Harris is going to decide on whether she wants to run for governor of California by the end of governor of California or president by the end of the summer. So there's a big presidential election in 2028. There's a gubernatorial election coming up in 2026 in California. And Kamala Harris has a decision to make. Does she run and lose the presidential election in 2026, or does she run for and lose the gubernatorial election in 2028? I'm sorry, in 2026, or the president in 2028? That's her. Which one is going to be less embarrassing to her when she loses? I'm personally praying for president. I really hope she goes for president, because to me, I would much rather see her lose the presidency again. I think it would be easier on J.D. Vance or whichever Republican gets chosen. I know it's not J.D. Vance yet, but I know that J.D. Vance is the potential front runner. I know that a lot of people like J.D. Vance, and he's turning out to be quite the ideal candidate, not just for vice president, but he's learning a lot very quickly just by being around Donald Trump, just by soaking up what's going on in Trump world. He's been pretty straightforward and doesn't beat around the bush with European leaders like Vladimir Zelensky, like Keir Starmer. He went right into Europe and get this, J.D. Vance went to Europe and made the Germans cry in their own country, which is incredible. Making world leaders cry is not something Donald Trump is. It's one of his specialties. In fact, Donald Trump made Justin, I always call him Pierre, it made Justin Trudeau cry the other day again. This is like multiple times. Listen to this.
On a personal level, I've made sure that every single day in this office, I put Canadians first, that I have people's backs. And that's why I'm here to tell you all that we got you. Even in the very last days of this government, we will not let Canadians down today and long into the future.
Wow.
On a personal level.
When a man's there, when he's crying. Look, there's tears in his eyes. I can't zoom in anymore, but you can see it's glistening. He's teary-eyed. He's got red. I mean, he's definitely weeping or on the brink of weeping or just got done weeping, but there's weeping going on. Look at that. Or he's stoned. But basically, this is a guy who is the leader of a country. And he's trying to tell you, I got you. I got your back. I don't believe it. I don't believe for 1 second that this guy who's crying has anyone's back. This is not a guy who has, I mean, not, you know, he may have, you know what, I'm not even going to say it. But Justin Trudeau, that guy is a failure on so many levels and continues to just baffle me. Donald Trump has made him cry now on multiple occasions, forced him to fly down to Mar-a-Lago and just get browbeat, and repeatedly has demoralized him by calling him the governor of the 51st state. I'm going to be honest with you. After that performance, after seeing those waterworks, I don't want him being the governor of the 51st state. That's so embarrassing. He's not even qualified to be governor of the 51st state or any of the other states for that matter, including Vermont. I'm just trying to think of it. I'm just trying to think of a really liberal. I'm thinking a liberal state. That's the one that Bernie Sanders is from, right? Yeah, Vermont. They're super libs. They're crazy liberal over there. And then finally, one last thing that I do want to mention, because this weekend is daylight savings time. And daylight savings time has been a point of contention for me and millions of Americans for forever. And I live in the Sunshine State, where sunshine is very important. And Marco Rubio, as senator for years, was trying to get rid of daylight savings time. It is a ridiculous... Here in the state of Florida, we actually have a tiny little bit of the panhandle that is in a different time zone. It's ridiculous. It's weird. I don't know how it happened, why it happened, but we need to get rid of it all. And for years, Marco Rubio has been fighting what seemed to be kind of a losing battle. I mean, you would think that now that we no longer live in a fully agrarian society, and now that we have, you know, lights and stuff, daylight savings time is no longer necessary, but it persists. And Donald Trump has now adopted it. Doge and Elon Musk have talked about getting rid of daylight savings time finally. And so we think we're on the brink. We think that we're on the brink of daylight savings time being a non-issue anymore. And this weekend, alas, one more time, we spring forward an entire hour. This weekend, one more time, we spring forward an hour. So on Sunday, when you wake up to go to church and you think it's 9 o'clock, it's actually 10 o'clock. So you're going to want to make sure you get up at 8 o'clock, because then it'll be 9 o'clock, and then you can make it to church on time at 10 o'clock. And if you're one of those people that goes to church at 7 o'clock, I have nothing to discuss with you. But Donald Trump was asked, what's going on with daylight savings time? When can we end this whole thing? And he said, it's not as easy as you think, because once again, Americans are totally divided on the issue of daylight savings time.
The clocks are going to spring forward on Sunday. When are you going to get rid of daylight savings time?
Okay, are you ready? So, this should be the easiest one of all, but it's a 50-50 issue. And if something's a 50-50 issue, it's hard to get excited about it. I assume people would like to have more light later, but some people want to have more light earlier because they don't want to take their kids to school in the dark. And it's a little bit one way, but it's very much a 50-50 issue. And it's something I can do, but a lot of people like it one way, a lot of people like it the other way. It's very even. And usually I find when that's the case, what else do we have to do?
Yeah. So he's saying, look, just like everything else, red state, blue state, Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, Russia, just like everything else, we're divided on daylight savings time. There's a whole segment of the country who's like, I want an extra hour of daylight. The Marco Rubio segment, the Floridians who are like, we need an extra hour of daylight. An extra hour of daylight means that our bars could stay open later, or we could, give surf lessons later. The beaches could stay open later. Disney World or Universal, all of these tourist attractions, people tend to like the sunshine. They like to stay out later. And if it's lighter longer, then that's great. That's great for those kind of sunshine economies like we have here in the free state of Florida. But there's parents who have to wake up early and take their kids to school, and it's dark outside. Now, and I get it. You don't want to take your kids to school in the dark. I mean, here's the thing though. You can change the time that your school starts. Like that's a change that could happen. If you're like, I don't want daylight savings time to go longer. I want it to be brighter earlier because I don't want to take my kids to school in the dark. Then get with your school board and say, all right, well, we need to change the time. We need to change daylight savings time. Or school time. It's dark in the morning and it's never going to change because we abolished daylight savings time. So now we need to start school at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I mean, that to me is something that could actually happen. You can change the start time of school. You really can't change time. You can't change the sun coming up and going down as much as we like to think we can. But that seems to be the debate, and that's why Donald Trump has not yet made a decision on whether or not we're going to spring forward an hour permanently or fall back an hour permanently. I thought maybe we could settle on 30 minutes either way, like maybe 30 minutes of extra daylight or 30 minutes of extra darkness, whichever way it works. But apparently that's not an option either. It's got to be all or nothing. And until the focus groups come in and until there's a full analysis, I'm sure Elon Musk is writing some kind of code. The Doge guys right now are writing some kind of code, trying to figure out what the best scenario would be. And until that happens, well, we're going to be springing forward and losing another hour this weekend. So, okay. Hey, listen, a couple things real quick. We had such a fantastic turnout for my Dollars for Followers masterclass, which happened on Wednesday. And a lot of great, it was nice to mingle with Katriots and talk about my other passion, which is, social media and business. I mean, people have multiple, I love talking about politics. As you know, I love talking about how weird and silly the Democrats are. And I love playing these sound clips for you. And it's really fascinating to me, but I also love social media because I do it every day. I mean, right now I'm on like 8 different social media platforms. I love using it to market myself and my businesses and my products and our partnerships. And so I came up with this program, this masterclass. It's 60 minutes and it's called Dollars for Followers. And I teach you what I do every single day. And I teach you a system where you can make $1 for every follower you have. So look at the number of followers you have, multiply it by 1, and that's how much money you can make. And with this system, you can actually do that over and over and over again. So I've put together a masterclass. It's $17 and it's 1 hour. So, I mean, it's amazingly inexpensive. And we had such a great turnout. In fact, I'm going to post some of the videos from our first one. We did something called content audits, where people would send me content that they posted online or they were thinking of posting online. And then I would give them helpful suggestions and creative, tweaks. And it was so much fun. I'm going to post some of those on the website, but we're going to do another one. We're going to do it again on Wednesday. This time it's going to be Wednesday, March the 12th at 8 p.m. Eastern, which again, because of daylight savings time, it will feel like 7 p.m. Eastern, but it won't. It's going to be 8. So anyway, if you would like to join us, go to dollarsforfollowers.com. dollarsforfollowers.com and register. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, it's like so many days away. The content audit part fills up really quick, and we didn't get to all of them. So if you want your content audited, I would go now. And I would get yourself a seat for this thing. Also, we are going to have, which is very cool, an after party here in like 3 minutes. If you're not a member of the Kaye Club, that's where our live after party is. If you're like, man, this 1 hour and 22 minutes of Mark Kaye Saves the Republic was fantastic, I want more. Great. We're going to do more here in just a minute. Go to Katriots.com, join the Kaye Club, and you can enjoy the after party. Also, this is cool. You know what else people get? Free stickers. We have these free sticker packs that you can only get as a member of the Kaye Club. The Gulf of America sticker, the 47 Daily, the official Kaye sticker, the new logo. All of these are available free of charge as a member of the Kaye Club. Plus, there's a 25% lifetime discount on any and all merchandise at the Mark Kaye shop. It's really incredible. Plus, do not forget the after party, which begins here shortly. Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to subscribe. Look, I don't take days off anymore. When Donald Trump takes a day off, I'll take a day off. So it's Friday, but tomorrow morning I fully intend there to be more content. Probably we'll have a 47 Daily ready for you when you wake up with your coffee. We're probably going to have to do some more videos and uploads and posts because something's going to break and we're going to need to tell you about it immediately. And the only way you're going to get to know about it immediately is if you subscribe to this channel, if you like this channel, if you set the notifications for this channel. If you're listening to the podcast, it's even easier. The podcast is amazing because as soon as you say follow or like or subscribe, they just send it right to your phone. And anytime you want to hear the latest, you can just boom, you tap the screen and there I am screaming into your earbuds. So it's really, really fantastic. So definitely do both of those. And thank you so much for joining me today. I know it was a little early. I know we jumped right into that press conference, but that's what we do. That's how we do. We bring you the news that you need to know when you need to know it. We keep you informed. We break down what the president's doing. We break down the misinformation. We break down the attacks coming from the left. We break down what's important and what's just extraneous BS propaganda so that you know what to focus on, so that you know where the threats are coming from, so that you know who to be prepared to fight, when to fight them, how to fight them, and how to win. Because if we continue to prepare and to fight and to win, then we will continue to save the Republic. After party starts in 3 minutes.